I'm WG and it's time for our 9 guide and review. What you can expect from this video is that you'll walk away with knowing how she works, which epiphanies are good on her, which are her copy targets, what are her best teammates, how do you gear her, and also overall any tips and tricks that come to mind. So let's start this whole session off by heading for the moment quickly into the Spiral Tower of Screams so we can have a look at how she works and which keywords are important on her and what her general goal in life, her general goal as a unit actually turns out to be. So first off, it's all about Hue. Her card Hue has 5 different forms that you'll be able or that you'll come in contact with, especially also later in this video. But what you need to know is that Hue is her main damage source and it will always start in your hand, and so long as you do not discard the card, it will always come back to your hand, allowing you a permanent Hue rotation. So that is Hue, her main damage mechanic. And then we also have ourselves Counterblade. Counterblade introduces a stack count in the top. You can see that right here. When a card is exhausted, 1 honed edge. So for example, we can now use Fighting Spirit, which is her purple card, to trigger the highest cost attack card of this unit in hand, which will always be Hue. So then we trigger Hue right here. And then 2 things happen. Number 1, we get ourselves a stack of honed edge. You can see increased defense based damage, amount of attack cards by 20%, up to 3 stacks. You can also see the counter at the top for 1 turn. But then also we've evolved, we've increased the level of Hue. For different weapons, for different epiphanies, there's different ways this one evolves, and the different ways it levels and scales. But what we're looking here at is Hue Extreme. Hue Extreme starts on base Hue Extreme, then creates level 1. Upon using level 1, you create level 2, level 3, level 4, and level 5. And then the moment level 5 gets used, or in this case incinerated, which is an effect that gets triggered upon a card being exhausted, meaning you just need to play the card, this card will then also create the beginning of it again in your hand, so you can go full circle. So then now we have ourselves Hue, our Hue right here, and we can again use Fighting Spirit to trigger Hue 1 more time. So now we have ourselves Hue level 2, and then we can play, or could play, Hue level 2. But now let me show you something else. These cards are also all ephemeral, meaning they exhaust themselves at the end of your turn. So they also rank up in level so long as you just end your turn. Meaning that now we have ourselves Hue level 3, and then obviously we would get ourselves access to Hue level 4. And then the moment we play Hue level 5, it starts over again. So that is her bread and butter, that is her main damage rotation. 9 also has another important part, and that is the Ignition keyword. It can be found on a Fatal Strike Epiphany right here, but it can also be more reliably found on the Hue in its Flash version. So Hue Flash has the Ignition tag, and what Ignition says is that if this card is in your hand when you exhaust any card in your team, you reduce the cost of this card by 1, massively cutting down on the cost needed to play out all these Hues. And then it also has a Hue level 1 into level 3, into level 2, into level 3, which then upon you playing or using, or even just normally through card effects, exhausting the level 3, that allows you to once again go back to Hue Flash and do it all over again. So in simplicity, you will be able to, if you have the AP or the means of using it, play every single Hue card in a row until the final level that then lets it start in the beginning again. And this card will always be in your hand, and even just naturally level up should you never play it, just through you ending your turn and the ephemeral effect exhausting the card at the end of your turn. Now let's just quickly familiarize ourselves with the entirety of her base kit, which consists of the Hue we've discussed, a damage boosting Experience Strike, which increases the damage of exhaust cards, which Hue are, where there's also a version that boosts it more, or even a tanky version for more shield, and other upgrades like that, which we'll go into greater detail. We then also have a Fated Strike, which allows you to exhaust the highest cost exhaust card in hand, like a Hue, to level it up into that next level. And then also we have ourselves the Counterblade, the buffing ability we've talked about, and then Fighting Spirit to trigger cards, all capped off, rounded off with a AoE ultimate that also exhausts the 2 highest cost cards in your hand. Like, this can again be used to level up Hue, while also then increasing your damage based on the cost points of the exhausted cards, making this a potent AoE tool. Alright, so it's time for our usual tier/epiphany rankings, where we have the higher the number, the worse the card, the lower the number, the better the tier. You can see we have tier 1 on every single one of these hues, and that is because all of them are useful in their own way. What you have is a line that creates a ton of shield while providing damage, turning her into that proper vanguard. You have the extreme line, which is raw single target damage with also the highest chain of playable cards in a singular turn. Then you have Flash, which is the one that allows you to use Ignition to play out you at pretty much low to no cost. Massacre, which is like Extreme, a pure DPS variant fully focused on AoE damage. So you have a single target variant, an AoE variant, a low cost variant, a shield variant, and then finally a variant that triggers upon counter. So for this Hue Ambush, you do not have to play it yourself. So long as an ally counters, this card gets activated. Though with the way it seems like this might just be weaker than the remaining hues, due to it only being able to trigger one of its hue line for free at the end of the turn, instead of if you get attacked and counterattacked multiple times, the whole entire hue row, bringing it a bit more in balance with what it could be in a hypothetical. Now, Inexperienced Strike, my personal favorite, has to be the 30% multiplier. So the idea would then to play Experienced Strike before you use your entire Hue line. The second Experienced Strike here, the difference is that if a card was exhausted this turn, you increase the damage of this card by 30%. The big question is, does it stack, and how high does it stack, and is there any validity to this? But this is more of a niche one due to it specifically turning Experienced Strike into a DPS tool rather than on its own, rather than a support for Hue. In the middle, we have the ability to gain increased shield with skill cards. So this will be a team-wide buff, increasing shields gained from any of her teammates. So think someone like Magna, Emir, and the like of the Vanguard class. Where then the fourth one is one of those I don't really prefer, due to it again focusing on the single target aspect and also having a clear cap at just plus 540% based on the hand size limit of 10, allowing you to only have that amount of cards in hand at the time of playing the card. But regardless of anything, all of these also do provide you with a shield of up to 20% of your max HP, so long as the damage is equivalent to that. With then the final Experienced Strike being a very unique existence in that it allows you to play out this card, and for one turn, whenever you exhaust a card, 9 gets counter attack stacks, which can then stack up to 10, give access to the potent ability that is counter attacks, now that they can also crit with the season changes, and they can also enable a bunch of other cards, as you see in just a second, where we now have ourselves Fated Strike. So Fated Strike, the first one, is going to just increase its damage for each cost of the highest cost card, but then it also exhausts that card, a tool to again push that hue rotation further without playing it, but only at one cost. This right here does not exhaust it anymore, mainly just turning it into a single target tool. So there's either a translation mistake, or this one, especially with also the cost increase, is one of the least desirable of the bunch. The middle Fated Strike allows you to make use of Ignition, so pushing the cost all the way down to 0 after 5 exhaust cards. And what it does, it allows you to instantly transform whatever hue you have to its final level, like you could, for example, use the Massacre Hue, or the Extreme Hue, and jump all the way from Hue to Hue level 5, getting the massive 1200% base damage. So that then itself is the middle Fatal Strike. Here, this is the, you could say, damage boosting Fatal Strike, which exhausts up to 2 random exhaust cards of other combatants, so not of 9. And for each card that is exhausted between 1 to 2, you either get a 30 or a 60% multiplicative damage bonus to the next attack card used, which can really lead to some incredibly damning, some really strong Hue hits. With then the last card here having Retain and saying that it increases its damage by 80% for each ally owning counterattacks, where there the big question is, does it scale by 80% times the amount of counterattacks, or is it just 2 times 80% so long as both teammates own counterattacks? But it again has this counterattack synergy, that you can clearly see. Now for the final Epiphany selection, we have Counterblade. On the leftmost one, we have when a card is exhausted 1 Honed Edge, which is by far the easiest condition to get, whereas the standard condition is you need to gain a shield through an ability, which depending on which hue you choose can be a bit harder for your 9. Where the second version is that it increases the shield gain on top of the base version, right? Increases shield gain, but also again gives you Honed Edge through shield gain, making these again also top tier cards, especially if you're running the more defensive, the Ironclad Hue, which has a bunch of shield, or just even through Experience Strike, which gives you a shield based on damage dealt, which can also benefit from that. Then we have one of the most unique ones, and that is Counterblade, the 4th version. When counterattack is gained, 1 Honed Edge plus. Counterattack gained can be done through the Epiphany we just discussed, the Experienced Strike right here, but it can also be gained through neutral cards that get added in, or even neutral Epiphanies on your already existing cards. Now, what is the difference between Honed Edge and Honed Edge Plus? Honed Edge Plus is the 20% multiplicative damage bonus at up to 3 stacks to 60%, but team-wide. So for the entirety of your team and not just 9, allowing her to also slot into this idea of a super tanky team with a bunch of shields, a bunch of counters, counter activations, damage based on counter stacks, and also team-wide buffing. Where then the final one is the Counterblade that at the start of the turn activates the Hue in hand 1 time, which can save you around 3 AP on its own. But why I'm not as big of a fan on it is because I would hate to lose out on the benefit of Honed Edge, because it is a 60% multiplier so long as you just use 1 or 2 hue, basically 2 or 3 hues each turn, you will really start seeing the value there. Now, what you might have noticed is there is no copy, right? There is no copy text on any of these. What's going on? Let's talk about it. So, all of these cards are unique, so you can't copy it. This one is unique, so you only have these 4 cards as a choice, where then you also can't copy any of the hues, and you then have these 5. So there's 9 different cards you can copy, but there's one card that is even more worthy, and that is the Ultimate 9 deck will most likely contain 4 copies of Fighting Spirit. And the reason why this is so nice and easy is because you will always be able to get yourself 4 copies of Fighting Spirit guaranteed, so long as you just run into 3 copy events, which you pretty much always will, and so long as you've maxed out or unlocked the ability to select a copy target, a combatant like 9. And the reason for that is simple. 9 has not just 1 but 2 unique cards, meaning she only has 1, 2, 3 copy targets, so you can always pick between Fatal Strike, Experience Strike and Fighting Spirit, making her incredibly light on deck building, where another benefit here is she does not need Divine Epiphanies, right? Divine Epiphany on Hue only works for the first Hue, making it very hard or very unlikely for there to be any crazy divine combinations of great importance, besides maybe, you know, saving an AP from getting an AP or a cost reduction, or maybe a cost damage increase, but this is just for the first hit due to the Hue levels being separate from its Hue base version. Alright, welcome to the team section, and no, I'm not kidding, 9 solos. What do I mean with that? It's, I used the team for, yeah, let's say 7, 8, 9 chaos runs in a row, and whatever I paired up with 9, it didn't really make a difference in the end. The only thing I need to do is I need to use Hue, and I use it, and then I try to use as many Hues as possible in a turn, and then I end my turn, and then I do that again, and 9 just shreds. When it just raw comes to chaos, 9 can absolutely carry her own weight, and she doesn't really need support from anybody for most chaoses and in most scenarios. But especially if you go into like divine chaoses, godly chaoses, or something like a tier 14, tier 15 onwards with some deadly debuffs, then that is kind of where the rest of these teammates come in. And also keep in mind, synergies between these teammates can, for the most part, be weaker in chaos, but only really truly be felt with fleshed out and built out decks, and then outside of the chaos in game modes where it all really just comes together. So on the right hand side here we have 9 getting supported by Orlea, Mika, Ray, Naja or Nia. All of them, as well as in this case you can also count Cassius, all of them are definitely able to provide the healing, and they're also able to help out in their own way. We have Mika and Naja for cost reduction, so you can play more Hues, while also having the ability to give a damage buff through Naja. Nia in the healing, the extra attack at the end of turn on shuffle, but also synergies like the ability to put Hue back on top of your deck and to then activate it with like G-Chord, skipping the whole cost idea, or just in general as a, yeah, good unit to pair up with. Ray having exhaust cards, allowing you to level up Hue without having to play it into that higher next version, while also, yeah, just overall being a pretty good healer whenever you do need healing, which you don't need as much because 9 just annihilates. And then at the top we actually have Orlea. And the reason why Orlea is that high or even bigger of a square is due to her softies. Her softies can give up to a 35% multiplicative damage increase to the next attack card played, and that's just upon retaining them. If you retain them twice, that's 70, 105, 100, you get the deal. And now if you also have multiple, or even use something like the Will of Light to retain multiple of them every turn, these numbers start to go really, really crazy. With then you combine the unit with the highest base damage in the game with the units with the highest damage base multiplier, right, with the highest multiplicative damage increase, and you start creating madness. And let's not forget, that's not just what she does. She also provides healing, she also provides shields, she has exhaust based cards triggering also 9's ignition effects, and to top it all off, she also can give through her potential up to 6% crit chance team-wide. And yeah, that's pretty much Orlea. And then you can just stack up these incredible damage boni and just hit the enemies like they've never been hit before. There probably will be something, so long as you just play it for enough turns and you also set up your 9 properly, where you can one-shot the newest boss at 57,000 HP with like what, 40% damage reduction with a singular 9 Hue. So that is Orlea 9, like the highest base damage with the highest multiplier together. And let's not forget as well, Orlea also has access to the powerful vulnerability buff, which is again a final damage increase, which once more will further boost 9's damage through the roof. And then on the left hand side we kind of have these other units to pair up with. So we have the more offensive pairings in Luke, Tressa and Serenial, who are all DPS in their own right, but provide exhausts for ignition synergy, or also just even more damage maybe in the downtime, as well as also at 0 cost from Luke, Tressa and Serenial, allowing you to play their cards for relatively cheap while using the majority of your AP on 9's Hues. And then here we have the defensive setup in Magna, Maribel, Amir and Kalib to play counter decks, to play shield decks, to play defensive decks, to even just play defensive boost decks where you can then also slot in a Naja for her defensive boosts. But then there also is again another bit of a dark horse, and that is Owen. Owen will have the ability to double the hit count of 9 Sue with just his wind charge attack, which can also again lead to some incredible numbers. He also has access to vulnerability, allowing for the multiplicative damage increase, but he can also reduce enemy fortitude, allowing these enemies to once again further take more damage. So Owen is not someone you should be overlooking when it comes to maximizing 9's damage potential. So now that we are all fully familiar with 9, let's go row by row and talk about what you want where, starting off with the partner. 9's most obvious choice, as always, is going to be the dedicated partner, which in this case is going to be Althea. Althea gives you a defense-based damage bonus, and then also so long as you use exhaust cards in a row, or even just at all for the next attack card used, a 20% multiplicative buff, as well as also for the first time using a 2 cost or higher card during any turn, a 100% shield. So that is a pretty solid package, all things considered, when it comes to the passive, where we then have the active skill, and her active skill gives her something unique as with most partners, and in this case it's a debuff we haven't seen before on anything else, and that is Caustic Remarks. Caustic Remarks multiplies the damage an enemy takes by 20%, and so long as you activate the partner skill while your team has a shield, it actually multiplies it by 30%, and that is for the next 5 instances of a hit. You can see increased damage amount taken, we get 5 Caustic Remarks, and on activation remove it by 1. So for example, in synergy with just 9, the next 5 outplayed hues are going to get a up to 20 to 30% final damage bonus in kind of the same class as vulnerability. So that is Althea, her right here, but by no means is Althea the one and only choice. Let's have a look at it. So if you just want to play her for raw damage, damage is all you really care about, damage is all you really expect from her, then your choices are mainly between Althea and then Wilhelmina. Wilhelmina is going to give you, especially at max copies, a overall higher defense increase. So your defense is going to be higher, meaning your shields are more powerful, and you obviously have a higher base value to deal damage with, and then you also get an additional increase to damage dealt to vulnerable targets, which I mean, let's actually go into the backpack so we can have a full look at the level 12 or at the 4 copy effect, so we actually have a full comparison. You can see it's 24% by plus 20, where then the ego skill gives you a plus 40% additional damage bonus team-wide and a 20% damage taken reduction for 1 turn. And that's kind of where the main difference comes in, where they are pretty close when it comes to performance in terms of the overall skill. The real difference maker is the ego skill, but then again, it is mainly used for 5 instances of gigantic burst, and only really necessary if you want to fully push the maximum potential of a singular hit by using as many factors as available. But Wilhelmina is by no means a bad choice, and Althea is by no means a must-have, even though I would rank the difference between the two between 10 to 15%, depending on how much you'll do at the end with the Caustic Remarks buff. So that's it on the more just purely offensive damage focused side, where then on the other hand, for this we'll actually go back into Agent Collection. On the other hand, we have ourselves the last 3 Vanguards. So Aisling, the Battle Pass partner, is going to increase your damage by increasing your defense, increase your health so you'll be able to tank a bit more, but also increase your shield gain for, again, even more survivability. And when the assigned combatant gains counterattack for the first time, they also gain plus 15% defense-based damage amount, where this defense-based damage amount will stay throughout the whole fight, and the ability for her to gain counterattacks is part of her kit or even part of neutral Epiphanies, where then the big selling point, the special part here, is the ability to activate Innos Guardian to retain 50% of your shield, mainly focusing Aisling into like that more defensive, that more maybe counter-focused idea, that more counter-focused section, where we then also have Erica, who again gives a defense bonus, also increases the damage of counterattacks multiplicatively, and when you use a skill or upgrade card, which she does at least have access to, you can now gain even more counterattacks, with then the final skill being AoE damage, a counterattack, and then if an enemy's anticipated action is to attack you at the end of your turn, another counterattack, again putting her into that same like defensive, more defensive focused box, where we then also have Rachel as the final option for the defensive side of things if you do not have access to the 5-star partners, be it through Battle Pass or RNG, where we have the increase to shield gain, and also when you gain a shield you also have a chance to gain a counterattack, rounded off with a shield and a draw, where we can once again have a look at the full dupes, you could say, where we get 20% multiplier to shield gain, 40% chance to gain a counterattack every time we gain a shield, and a 100% shield and a draw, putting it fully into the defensive category, making it the split between Wilhelmina and Rachel when it comes to defensive versus offensive, and then obviously Althea versus Aisling / Erica in offensive versus defensive. Alright, next up, potential priorities. Overall, once again, stay the hell away from this. If you want to pay the 26 crystals and the 2 ones here, be my guest, but don't do it, right? Like, if you want to listen to anything, don't do it. It's not worth the resources. It's not going to change anything. Where then again, this basic card proficiency should be cheap and easy to get. This top efficiency is your first point of where you want to go before you worry about everything else, so that you can get the 5% order damage and also up to 15% order damage multiplier total. And then now that you've made through that, now you get yourself the unique stat upgrade, then your focus again is going to be split between crit chance, so you have obviously a higher chance to make use of the crit damage multiplier, additional crit damage multiplier, but the order here I would say is you want to split it between crit chance and unique card damage, and that is due to this being a 20% multiplier to base value, massively impacting the numbers of what a 9 can do. So put a lot of weight on the unique potential, the crit chance potential, and obviously the top potential, whereas then the crit damage is a finishing touch, and I don't think there's any need to invest resources into basic cards or common cards, but you can always do that in the future and cheaper. But by no means do you need her fully maxed out for her to be any good. Alright, so gear set time. Overall, my current set is the old order set, which gives up to 20% multiplier for the entirety of the turn after the second attack card usage, and the crit damage 2-piece. But what do you see there? Why does this says new order set 4-piece first, then the old order set, then cool cost set, and 2-piece set? Let me explain. So there is currently a translation error going on in the memory fragment section, and that is because this text is actually meant to say multiplies the damage of the first 5 attack cards played each turn of Justice and Order element, so long as the attack cards played are exhaust cards. So exhaust based attack cards gain a 30% multiplier for the first 5 times used each turn, perfectly lining up with what 9 wants to do, perfectly lining up with the idea of her kit, and also massively taking advantage of these huge base damage multipliers to give you an some crazy numbers. And that's why the new order 4-piece is the chase, the one you want to get yourself your hands on first, and is also what I will be farming in the next days going forward. And then the combination is preferably with the crit damage 2-piece, but the defense 2-piece is also good until you can get the crit damage 2-piece to be the set to go alongside. So we have the new order set discussed, we have the old order set discussed. Now, what about the, almost at this point you could say forgotten set, and that is right here. Line of Justice, also farmable in the same dungeon as the defensive 2-piece pieces. Right here, the Line of Justice gives you 20% crit chance to cards that cost 2 or more, with her mainly relying on her hue and all of these cards being 3 cost or 2 cost. She can actually take advantage of this, and we all know how hard crit damage is to come by, so that is a definite contender. So especially if your substats can compare, it can actually be a maybe even a top tier choice for that one. And then again, if you're still just working around, if you don't have a lot available, then your set choice is going to be 2-piece, 2-piece, so 2-piece defense, 2-piece crit damage, combined with then either attack or just non-set pieces. Now let's quickly go through the stats and also what subsets you want to be looking for. At slot 6 you definitely want defense main stat. On slot 5 you're looking for order damage main stat, and in slot 4 you're looking for crit chance main stat. So these are the 3 main stats, whereas again the substat order is going to be crit chance followed by crit damage, defense flat followed by defense percent, and that then capped off by attack flat and attack percent, as still productive and applicable scalars, but by no means as impactful as defense. So that then also brings us to a total defense of 346. Your goal defense should be at minimum 300 for the 5% order damage, but if you can then get into like the 320, 330, that's kind of the sweet spot, because it is a bit of a stretch to try to get to 350. We are close, but we aren't quite there, and we do have quite a bit of amount of defensive flat if you want to pause and go through these pieces. So it's not something that's super attainable, but also not super necessary, because if we take a look at our total stats, you can see we already gained 14.2 out of 15% additional order damage from the potential, and then the full stats are 58.3 crit, 189 crit damage on 346 defense on, I guess, 460 attack. Alright, now dupe time. How important are these dupes? What do they even do? So, Fighting Spirit itself will always pick Hue in 99% of cases, and if you have her at E0, Hue will always pick a random target or based on some type of algorithm, which can which has 0 impact if you're fighting just one target, but can mess with you a bit if you're fighting against a target, and especially if it summons minions and you want to attack a target specifically. But it's nothing you can't get around, it's nothing you can just solve with cold hard damage. But that is the difference, where you then would be able to pick the target of the hue after getting the E1, making it a valuable, you could say, quality of life tool, though maybe even a bit more, but also in only certain specific niche scenarios. Now the E2 gives you a new card, important here though, it's only at the start of the battle, so this one is an absolute killer card in chaos runs, but she already annihilates chaos runs like no tomorrow, making it not as important. So what you can do with this card, simply speaking, is you can play it 3 times and you can overall get a total of 3 tenacity damage and 3 vulnerable stacks that you can apply before big hits to have those big hits have even more of an impact. Also important is that this card is a skill card, so you can apply the vulnerability. You can even apply multiple stacks of vulnerability without using any pre-placed defensive or any defensive buffs or offensive buffs on the target, as well as also none of your stacked buffs, which could set up some incredible damage turns. But I really do not consider the E1 or E2 anything you need. I am very much of the opinion that her E0 is already a killer. Now the E3, simply speaking, is just more damage. The E4 can give you up to 150% increased defense based damage to 9's attack cards, which caps out at 3 stacks, allowing you to get up to 150% additional damage on her cards. Whereas then the E5 gives 6% multiplier to the base damage of all cards, which is especially impactful on a 9 due to her high base multipliers, but it really doesn't translate into anything super crazy. Where then we have the E6, where whenever a Hue card is activated, you also apply 15% of whatever damage you deal as an additional fixed damage hit, making the E4 and the E6 obviously chase value targets, but it's not something I would really recommend for you going unless she is for some reason the favorite character in the game. You also have the ability to, for example, buy the 2 dupes at 400 each from the shop, maybe even use your seasonal dupes from maybe season 1, the one we get from season 2, then you can make your way into the E4. But due to her being a standard character and also going into the standard banner, we will all have the chance to obtain more copies of her over time. Alright, now let's talk about the save data, the things I've noticed, the changes, what kind of items are you looking for, and everything else that can be a guide on your journey from my day 1 experiences in regards to what is useful or not. So it should come to the surprise of absolutely nobody, but you're never better off farming anywhere besides the seasonal planet. You can reroll the planet as many times as you want. You reliably get access to tier 15, allowing you for 180 save data increase. You also have the reobserve currency. You can quit at any time and re-enter should you die, should you not like the run that you're running. And also, again, needs to be mentioned, the chaos system, zero system buffs, the ability to pick 1 out of 3 cards is very, very integral to making a successful 9, because it increases your chances to pretty much, I would say, 100%. Like, the odds of you walking away with the 9 deck you want are pretty much 100%. Now, how would that look like? It's going to take the grind to unlock that option, but once you do, you are guaranteed to always pick between Experience Strike, Fated Strike and Fighting Spirit, and then the goal is to just get 4 Fighting Spirits so that you can level up or increase the rotation of your hues. It can help with any hues, but also keep that in mind, 4 might not be the more optimal copy for every deck. Especially on Hue Extreme, it is noticeable because Hue Extreme has up to 6 variants, allowing you to use this card quite often and also treat Hue as pretty much a 1 cost instead of a 3 cost card. But you might even be better off using just 2 or 3 Fighting Spirits total and potentially getting yourself more damage boost through Fated Strike, skipping the line, or even just multiplicative damage boost from something like the Experience Strike for the entirety of your rotation, should it not be as long. But that's on the condition that you cycle through your entire deck. You really can't go wrong with having more Fighting Spirits, because you'll be able to play more hues regardless of what hues you're looking for. Where then obviously exceptions to this are the Ignition Hue, because if you have enough exhaust cards, you can play these at 0 or just 1 cost by themselves, or even the Ambush Hue, because it's fully reliant on counters. But for the most part, 4 Fighting Spirits is by far the most solid deck, and it's as easy as ever, as easy as it could have been. So that is that right there. As I've already briefly mentioned before, getting a good Divine on Hue really is very hard to do, but also not that important due to it never really appearing much. The best Divine I found would be a neutral Epiphany to Hue plus a 2 vulnerable Divine, or just a 2 vulnerable Divine, allowing your next 2 Hues after your base Hue to deal more damage, while you then, the moment you finish your Hue rotation, are going to get Hue back, allowing you to play it again. So there is some decent options, but due to Hue not being applied to the level section. It really isn't that important for it to be divine. All these other cards are just divine, not by choice but by happenstance, where obviously anything that cost reduces can be quite good, because if you're able to play Experience Strike at 0 cost instead of 1 cost, that saves you the cost and also allows you to just easily play it out early so that all your hues deal more damage. And then here anything AP, anything else like that early is always quite good. So that is the standard deck, but now let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is gear. Gear wise, the best gear you can find is definitely again going to be Cthulhu chess piece, due to the 12% multiplicative final defense increase. And then yeah, arena wise, anything damage, right? Anything multiplicative damage that applies to 9 is just right up your alley, like increasing the damage of exhaust cards, increasing the damage of 2 cost or higher cards, finding weapons, finding chess pieces with crit chance, with crit damage, with all these other multipliers. A weapon like this, if allies don't receive damage for 1 turn, meaning if you fully block or don't get attacked the past turn, a 50% multiplier. The glove right here, when a shield is gained, increased damage amount of the next attack card activated by 20% for 1 turn, which you can do twice. Even something like an amorphous cube giving you 25% damage amount, and then upgrades like when a 3 cost or higher card is activated, 1 AP per turn is huge. This 10% attack, negative 5% defense might actually be considered a bit of a debuff. Other options we have is, let's see, what else do we have? Again here, exhaust card damage. Also, when an upgrade card is used, 30% damage amount is a lot more temporary. And also it's only damage amount, so it should not be multiplicative, but at this point, what do we really truly know? And then we also have ourselves right here as another option, this one, at the start of the battle, if only X amount of cards increase damage amount, which is again multiplicative, very powerful, you can start keeping your eyes open for monster cards. And you know what, monster card wise, there's one in particular that can be really, really deadly on her. And that is the card that was thought to be dead, the card that was thought to be defeated. Let's see if we can find it real quick, or if they decided to obviously gray it out now that it's a, you could say, almost entirely new card. Spirit Keyfox. Spirit Keyfox now allows you to select and draw 1 card from the draw pile and apply retrieve instead of copying it. And you might have already guessed it, if you can use Spirit Keyfox here to target a fighting spirit, so you can turn 1 fighting spirit into 2, allowing you to do 2 hue attacks at just 1 cost instead of just 1, due to it gaining retrieve and coming back upon you using it. So that is something you can think about, seeing as how it is the Order planet. And then let's see other options. Do we have anything else fancy collected? Obviously the Cthulhu gun, if you get it, that is quite good. There is again this like God Hammer. It's not something you should rely on. It's pretty much a random stat out of every single gear piece in the game at, I believe, either rarity or above. It might, yeah, I don't think it's just, yeah. So it's pretty much any stat. So you either get something crazy or you don't. It's not that important. What is important is to get some sweet arena stats together. And then, yeah, there's a wide variety of items that can actually work well. But in general, look out for anything multiplicative. And let's actually see. Do we have a deck? Yeah, Azure Lumen. If you want to, you can add these Azure Lumens into your deck. They allow you to exhaust a card, which then provides the ability to, for example, level up a hue by 1 level. And they can also come in an Epiphany like this, which gives you at the start of the turn 1 counter attack, which can work together with 9's counter attack cards. Like for example here, when counter attack is gained, 1 honed edge plus, which we get at the start of every turn. And then also Ebony Lumen is a card you get through an event. I don't think it's something you should have in a 9 deck in particular, but in a team deck it just makes a lot of sense. And that is, you can play this card out if you wanted to get the draw 3 effect, but you can more effectively just exhaust this card and still get the draw 3. And then once that happens, you can exhaust this card for draw 2, and then this card right here for draw 1, giving you a total of 6 draw out of just one singular card, where then also something that you'll unlock with Chaos Progression are these exploration rewards right here. So a card like, for example, this one, Nutrient Absorption, which allows you to select and exhaust one card in hand, and for each cost you reduce the cost of one random card in hand. Though keep in mind it is an exhaust card, meaning you'll only be able to use it once per turn. So I hope I was able to give you a bit of an overview. Keep in mind that is once again just what I've seen, what I've found out over like the last few hours of just the season release. There will be more things, we'll notice. There will also be a proper full E0 showcase and also a SAVEDATA guide as usual. So I hope you enjoyed this one, and as always we see each other in the next one. Peace!